In the early 1950s, a small group of ordinary Americans became convinced that the world was about to end. There was nothing unusual about them on the surface. They were office workers, housewives, engineers, and small business owners. They paid taxes, listened to the radio, and lived quiet lives. What brought them together was a belief. A woman from Chicago claimed she was receiving messages from higher beings through automatic writing. According to these messages, the Earth would be destroyed by a massive flood on a specific date in December 1954. Only a small group of chosen believers would survive. They would be rescued shortly before the disaster by a spacecraft sent from another world. The messages were detailed. They included timelines, instructions, and warnings. The group did not see this as fantasy. They treated it as information. As the predicted date approached, belief turned into preparation. Members of the group began reorganizing their lives around the coming event. Some quit their jobs. Others sold personal belongings or gave away money. Several cut ties with skeptical friends and family members who questioned the story. This was not impulsive behavior. It unfolded gradually. Each small commitment made the next one easier. The closer the deadline came, the more real the prophecy felt. Importantly, these people were not isolated. They met regularly, discussed the messages, and reinforced each other's certainty. Doubt was not forbidden, but it was reframed. Any uncertainty was interpreted as a test of faith. At the same time, a team of researchers was quietly observing the group. Social scientists had learned about the prophecy and recognized a rare opportunity, a chance to study what happens when a deeply held belief collides with reality. They did not interfere. They simply watched. As the final night arrived, the group gathered together. They removed all metal objects from their bodies, believing it would interfere with the rescue. They waited for the signal that would tell them to leave their homes and prepare for evacuation. Midnight passed. Nothing happened. The flood did not come. The spacecraft did not arrive. The world remained unchanged. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. According to every prediction, this should have been the end of the belief. But it wasn't. Something else was about to happen, something far stranger. In the hours immediately after the prophecy failed, confusion spread through the group. Some members sat in silence. Others cried. A few quietly left and never returned. For a brief window of time, disbelief was visible. The certainty that had held them together suddenly had nowhere to go. This moment was critical. According to logic, the belief should have collapsed. The prediction was clear. The date had passed. Nothing happened. There was no ambiguity. Reality had delivered a direct contradiction. But instead of ending, the belief adapted. The woman who claimed to receive the messages went into isolation. For several hours, she refused to speak. The group waited. When she finally returned, she brought a new message. According to this message, the prophecy had not failed. The flood had been prevented. The world was spared because the group's faith had been strong enough to change the outcome. Their belief, they were told, had saved humanity. This explanation solved everything at once. The failure was no longer evidence against the belief. It became proof of its power. Relief replaced doubt almost instantly. Tears turned into celebration. Members embraced each other. The tension dissolved. The group did not disperse. It stabilized. Observers noted something remarkable. Instead of weakening, the belief became stronger. Members who remained became more committed than before. They spoke with greater confidence. They began contacting newspapers and radio stations, eager to share what they now saw as a miracle. From the inside, this response felt rational. To admit the belief was false would require acknowledging enormous personal loss. Jobs had been abandoned. Relationships damaged. Reputations destroyed. Accepting failure would mean admitting that these sacrifices were meaningless. For many, that psychological cost was unbearable. Instead, the belief shifted just enough to protect everything that had already been invested. Researchers later described this moment as a textbook example of what happens when deeply held beliefs collide with undeniable evidence. Rather than abandoning the belief, people reinterpret reality to preserve their sense of identity and purpose. The group did not see themselves as deceived. They saw themselves as chosen. Over the following days, some members left quietly, unable to reconcile the new explanation. Others stayed and doubled down. They organized meetings, wrote letters, and attempted to recruit new believers. Public attention became part of the story, reinforcing the idea that they had witnessed something extraordinary. What mattered most was not the original prophecy. It was the response to its failure. The belief had survived reality. And that made it far more dangerous than before. After the prophecy failed, the group did not immediately fall apart. In the days that followed, something unusual happened. Instead of distancing themselves from the belief, the remaining members grew closer. Meetings became more frequent. Conversations became more confident. The tone shifted from uncertainty to quiet certainty. Publicly, they explained the failure in simple terms. The disaster did not occur, they said, because it had been prevented. Their faith had mattered. Their commitment had changed the outcome. From their perspective, the prophecy had not failed, it had succeeded in a different way. For outside observers, this explanation seemed irrational. For the group, it was stabilizing. Researchers who had been observing the group carefully documented this shift. They noticed that belief was no longer tied to a specific date or event. The original prediction slowly faded into the background. In its place emerged something more durable. A shared identity built around sacrifice and meaning. This transformation was critical. At this stage, abandoning the belief would have required more than admitting a mistake. It would have meant accepting that months or years of emotional investment, public commitment, and personal loss had been unnecessary. Some members had quit jobs. Others had damaged relationships with family and friends. A few had publicly declared their certainty. Letting go would mean confronting embarrassment, regret, and loss, all at once. Instead, belief adapted. Psychologists later described this process as a core example of cognitive dissonance. When evidence directly contradicts a deeply held belief, people experience intense psychological discomfort. To reduce that discomfort, the mind looks for the least painful adjustment. In this case, reinterpreting reality was easier than rewriting identity. Importantly, intelligence was not the issue. Many members were educated, articulate, and capable of critical thought. What trapped them was not ignorance, but commitment. The more someone had invested, the harder it became to step away. Over time, the group's beliefs became less specific and more symbolic. Dates disappeared. Predictions softened. The message shifted from, "this will happen," to, "this already mattered." This made the belief harder to challenge. Vague ideas cannot be proven wrong as easily as concrete ones. The researchers noted another factor: community. After the failure, the group became a refuge. Members supported one another emotionally. Shared belief protected them from ridicule and isolation. Leaving the group would mean facing the outside world alone, carrying the weight of having been wrong. Eventually, practical realities pulled the group apart. People needed jobs. Families demanded attention. Life resumed. But the psychological lesson remained. The study was later published and became foundational in modern psychology. It demonstrated that evidence alone does not always change minds. In some cases, strong evidence makes beliefs more resilient. When belief becomes intertwined with identity, challenging it feels like a personal attack. This case continues to be cited because it reveals something deeply human. When faced with a clear choice between accepting reality and protecting the story we tell ourselves about who we are, many people choose the story. The world did not end. But the way we understand belief was permanently changed.